Greetings and welcome to another edition of Caring About Seniors. I am your host, Adrienne Houghton. Each week, I sit down with Dave Stieglitz, who is the president of Oasis Senior Advisors Jacksonville, and we discuss all aspects of senior care. Today, we are delighted to invite Dr. David Free from Haven Hospice and Palliative Care into the studio, and he's the nurse lead practitioner. Welcome, David. Good to see you again, David.
Good to see you again.
We have the David Show today.
Yes.
So tell me, Haven Hospice, what is it?
Haven Hospice is a non-profit organization here in 18 counties in Northeast Florida, and we provide hospice and palliative care services, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. It is an organization that, in the hospice side, provides 24/7 care to people who may be in the last 6 months of life. So we've been in existence since 1979, which is a very proud and excellent history of care in our service area to the patients and families living with serious illness.
I mean, that's quite something. I mean, and you've got a huge area because Northeast Florida, I mean, that's a lot of taking care. So tell me, who is really eligible for hospice care?
Well, if we're going to specifically talk about our hospice services, they would generally be people who are, for the most part, in the last 6 months of life. People who, where perhaps care is no longer possible, I should say cure is no longer possible for their serious illness, or no longer desired. They've had enough. They've just decided they want to spend, their final days. Mm-hmm. But I think the problem with hospice is that most people access those services very, very late in the game. And they really could be for 6 months or longer, and providing support to that patient and to that family.
Yes. Now, you briefly touched on palliative care. Tell us exactly what is palliative care, because it goes hand in hand with hospice care. But what is it? Because there's a lot of people that don't exactly know what it is.
Yes. So just back to hospice quickly. Hospice is a Medicare or an insurance benefit. And it can happen in homes, hospitals, facilities. In fact, a lot of people think that hospice care is actually in a facility when in fact 90% of the people we care for at Haven Hospice are in their home. Palliative care is similar in that it's dealing with people who are experiencing serious illness, but they may not be yet hospice appropriate. They may not be in the last 6 or several months of their life. They're probably still receiving curative therapy and want to receive curative therapy. So like hospice, we would be focusing on pain management, symptom management, quality of life, support to the family, and discussing healthcare goals. But they're just not in that specific insurance envelope or period of time when cure is no longer happening. So palliative care is when cure is happening. Hospice is when cure is no longer possible or no longer desired.
And David, I mean, you must come across people who are perhaps going into residential homes and also need hospice or palliative care.
Yes, hospice is just such a wonderful service. The people that provide it, their hearts are they're just huge. And the families are so appreciative when hospice comes in. And hospice can start in the home. If it gets too much to stay in the home, hospice can follow them to an assisted living, to a residential care home, to an adult family care home, to skilled nursing. Hospice can follow them where they go throughout that. But those folks are I'm just always amazed at the caregivers with hospice. Wonderful, wonderful people, and the services that they provide. So comforting and valuable to the families.
Yeah. Who makes up a hospice team?
So in hospice, we have a large interdisciplinary team. It might involve the CNA, who's really the bedside caregiver, who might be doing bathing or helping with sort of light household chores and work. There would be a nurse who would look in from time to time, who's checking in on the patient and looking for changes or need for physician, for example, or nurse practitioner intervention. That nurse would have access then to the nurse practitioner or physician who would engage in pain and symptom management. It would involve a social worker, perhaps, if there were psychosocial issues, or perhaps need to have a discussion about an alternate place if home just became not possible. There are chaplains who are available to people of faith who choose to have chaplains. And so we have a large interdisciplinary team of people who support people on hospice.
As well as the bereavement counseling, which is a wonderful follow-up that many people don't know is available through hospice.
So tell me about the bereavement counsel. Is it prior to or is it after the passing of the loved one?
So that's a good question, because there is something called anticipatory grief, which is when people are anticipating a loss. And that is certainly helped by the hospice multidisciplinary team while we're providing care. But after one of our patients that we've cared for has passed on, we do, through our hospice, provide 13 months of bereavement support to their families. And so people can access that bereavement support virtually through support groups, sometimes telephonic support for bereavement. And interesting, one of the things I think that sets us apart at Haven is that anyone in our service area who's experienced a loss, regardless of whether their loved one was on Haven services, we will provide some bereavement support to them as well if they reach out to us.
Gosh, that's really generous, actually, because you must have a lot of people that you're dealing with on a daily basis.
Well, we have about 600 people in our hospice program across the 18 counties of Northeast Florida, really from the Georgia border down to Chiefland, through Gainesville, all the way to Jacksonville Beach, and down to DeLand and over to Palatka. So it's a pretty large service area.
Yeah, that's a huge service
area. And then in terms of the bereavement support, to your point, is we also have something called Camp Safe Haven, where we have children's camps throughout the year to support children and youth who've experienced a loss as well.
I was going to say, because it's not always seniors that are suffering or need hospice or palliative care, and so sometimes there are small children or even teenagers who perhaps won't speak or say what's bothering them. And so you actually help them too?
Absolutely. Certainly through our traditional bereavement services we can help them, but we also have the camp where they can come together with other children who've experienced a loss. And sort of helps to normalize it for them by being with other children, and they realize they're not alone in their experience.
Yes, exactly. What other services do you offer?
So we have a number of other services that I'm very proud of. One of the things, there's a national program called We Honor Veterans, and there are 5 levels in that We Honor Veterans program. And proud to say we are a level 4 organization about to achieve level 5. And really, as someone who's served in the military myself, I think it's really important to acknowledge the service of people who have served, and also the special needs that they may have in terms of dealing with serious illness and their own impending death, and the families of these individuals who have served. So we have special services to honor people who have served in the military. We have what we call the Haven Attic, which is a place where people can donate furniture, clothing, and other people can come in and buy those items. And the unique thing about the attic is what it does is it allows us to provide care to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to have that care because of insurance issues or such. So the attics allow us to provide additional care to people. So we always encourage people who have household items or things they'd like to donate. They don't necessarily have to make a donation of cash or a bequest to our hospice, but they can just donate some shoes or clothing or a lamp or something, and then we can sell those things and provide support to seniors and also younger people who need hospice services.
You also provide guidance in advanced directives. Talk about that a little bit and the importance of it.
Absolutely. We have a transitions program, but really it's about helping individuals establish advanced directives. I think one of the challenges in America is that only 30% of people over 65 have an advanced directive. An advanced directive really is just like making sure that your loved ones know what types of care you wouldn't want in certain circumstances. It really is a gift to a family to know what mom or dad or brother or sister might have wanted, so that you're not guessing in a crisis moment. And so having those conversations is important. And we use a tool called Respecting Choices, but there are a number of tools out there, and I would invite the listeners to go to our website, which is beyourhaven.org. and access some of those materials, but really they can have someone come to their home or do a virtual visit and have discussions with individuals or families about setting their healthcare goals, which again, like I said, is a tremendous gift and I think very, very important. And where it becomes important is that what we see in the United States is that about 3/4 of Americans, when surveyed, say that they would like their final days and months to be in their home. Yeah. But 75% of people are in facility and in hospitals. And so there's a disconnect because it's really the opposite of what people are saying they want. And setting advance directives and having palliative care early and then hospice care when it's appropriate help enable people to achieve that goal as much as possible and where possible to stay in their homes as long as possible.
Yes.
Circle back because you kind of brushed over it, but yeah, they can go download the forms and look at them, but I've seen those forms and you go through and they're difficult to fill out on your own. And you mentioned having people come and actually talk you through what does this question mean? What does this option mean? I think is so very important because they're difficult forms to fill out for yourself.
Yeah. Well, they are, but they cover a number of important issues to your point, and that is, for example, would you want CPR? Would you not want CPR? Or maybe, and in what circumstances? Would you want artificial hydration nutrition to keep you alive? Would you want to be on life support or a ventilator? Would you want dialysis? Yes, no, or maybe, and if maybe, for how long and in what circumstances? So it helps to really sort of navigate some of those things. A lot of people, would not want to be on life support for an extended period of time, but they haven't verbalized that, and so that becomes a challenge when that's initiated, is for the family to know when would my mom or dad want that to stop. So I think it does help people navigate some of the difficult questions, but also I think, again, talking about advance directives, it's not like a last will and testament where you set it and it's sort of static and it remains. These things can change from day to day, people's goals and wishes, and that's why palliative care becomes so important, because the healthcare decisions that we might make, all of us at this table today, are different than the ones we might make 10 or 20 years from now when our health is completely different, or even if we had a sudden unexpected thing happen, those decisions would change again. Yeah. So it's important that palliative and hospice care revisit those discussions, and that's what we do.
Do volunteers play a large part in your organization?
Absolutely. We have a large core of volunteers. I'm sure you can imagine that COVID has affected our ability to send people into the homes, and so that's been sort of put on hold, but we're just in the process now of sort of reinitiating the volunteer support. But our volunteers are crucial. They're the lifeblood of our organization because we can't be everywhere all the time. Sometimes we need just a sitter to sit with someone. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we need someone to help somebody get to an appointment. Sometimes we just need someone to help somebody, prepare a meal or something. And our volunteers are just so crucial.
David, we've covered a lot of different things, but do you have any last words that you'd like to say for the audience?
Sure. I think just a few things about services. I think one of the things that hospice also provides that people can avail themselves when someone's on hospice, whether they are in home or some other place, we have something called respite, which is that if someone's caring for their loved one in the home, sometimes they just need a break. So respite can be, for example, for up to 5 days. We have 5 care centers in the area. They're not care centers in that they provide residential care like in assisted living or something, but they're generally for people who are having an increase in symptoms that can't be managed in the home, or someone requires injectable medications that can't be given in the home because they can no longer swallow. But those are also places where people can go for respite for up to 5 days to be able to receive that support. And I think the only other thing I would share is that people understand the difference between palliative care and hospice. Again, to reiterate, that palliative care is for anyone living with serious illness who may have pain or symptom issues, wants to discuss goals, or needs psychosocial support at any stage or any age of illness. Whereas hospice is generally that last 6 months, and I would really encourage the listeners to avail themselves of hospice care at an earlier time point, because it really can help patients and families to achieve some of their goals and keep people at home.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all you do, and thank you for coming on and perhaps making things a little clearer for the viewers.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. And don't forget, if you'd like to know any more information about what was discussed today, you can find it at www.beyourhaven.org or iwannabuzz.com.